The War Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation floated in geostationary orbit above Velthari Prime, a crystalline disk of a station, where 17 alien species sent their finest military minds to deliberate in peace. It had never known panic. Until today. High Marshal Zyrex Thorne stood at the center of the holographic war table, his forearms folded across his broad chest, his compound eyes scanning the cascading red alerts flooding every screen. The Kroth Dominion, an empire of cold, calculating conquerors, had launched a simultaneous strike across 12 outer systems. 20 billion civilians. Gone or fleeing. The Confederation's finest fleets had been shattered within 48 hours. Zyrex had seen war. He had commanded war. But he had never seen anything like this. "We request emergency military integration with the Human Defense Forces," he said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his lower hands. "They are unusual allies. But at this moment, I see no other option." His aide, a young Velthari with silver-tipped feathers, hesitated. "High Marshal, are you certain? The humans have only been a member state for 60 of their years. Their fleet is small." "Their planet?" "Their planet," Zyrex interrupted quietly, "has been at war with itself for 10,000 years." Admiral Ethan Cross arrived on the station without ceremony. No honor guard. No gleaming dress uniform. He stepped off the transport in worn tactical blacks, a datapad under one arm, a cold cup of coffee in the other hand. He was not tall by human standards, medium height, lean, with gray-streaked hair cut close and eyes the color of deep ocean water. Eyes that, Zyrex noticed immediately, did not look around the chamber the way most species did when they first entered. They did not look up at the magnificent star-filled dome, or at the glittering ranks of alien admirals. They went straight to the war table. "Admiral Cross," Zyrex said formally, extending his upper right hand. "I am grateful for your rapid response." Ethan shook it without breaking his gaze from the holographic battlefield. "How long since the Kroth hit the Irvani corridor?" 31 hours. "Supply lines?" "Severed." "Civilian evacuation?" 40% complete before the second wave hit." Ethan set down his coffee cup, set down his datapad, and placed both hands flat on the war table. He was quiet for exactly 11 seconds. Zyrex counted, because the silence felt like a held breath. Then the human admiral looked up. And something in those deep-water eyes had changed. "Okay," Ethan said. "Here's what we're going to do." What followed confused every senior commander in the room. Ethan did not ask for more ships. He did not request Confederation fleets to reinforce the front. Instead, he pulled up logistics maps, supply routes, fuel depots, food distribution networks, water processing on occupied worlds. "He's looking at supplies," whispered Admiral Pyrex of the Irvani, incredulous. "He's looking at everything," Zyrex murmured, watching closely. Ethan began to speak, and for 3 hours, he did not stop. He mapped the Kroth advance not as a military movement but as a hungry organism. It needed fuel, it needed momentum, it needed its enemy to respond in predictable ways. He identified 17 choke points the Kroth hadn't even recognized as choke points. He proposed letting the Dominion advance, letting them advance, while the Confederation forces vanished into the outer dark and began a campaign that had no word for it in galactic standard. "Attrition," Ethan said, pointing at the map. "We don't fight their war. We make them fight ours. We don't hold ground, we hold time. Every supply convoy that disappears. Every fuel depot that goes dark. Every communication relay that stops answering. We are not trying to defeat the Kroth army." "Then what are we trying to do?" Admiral Pyrex asked, genuinely lost. Ethan looked at him with something that wasn't quite calm. Something older. Break their will to continue. Zyrex requested a private meeting that night. They sat in a small observation room, stars wheeling slowly past the transparent hull. Ethan drank his reheated coffee and said nothing, waiting. I have read your species history, Zyrex finally said. As much as is publicly available. Your wars, they are difficult to comprehend. Which part? All of it. Zyrex leaned forward. Other species, when we war, we seek decisive engagements. We seek to destroy the enemy's capacity to fight. We seek victory. Clean. Final. But humans, your historical conflicts lasted decades. Centuries, sometimes. You burned your own lands to deny them to invaders. You starved yourselves to outlast sieges. You built weapons specifically designed to create suffering rather than death, because suffering demoralizes. He paused. You invented total war. The concept does not exist in any other military tradition in this galaxy. Not truly. Ethan was quiet for a moment. It's not something we're proud of. I am not speaking of pride. I am speaking of capacity. Zyrex's 4 eyes met the human's 2. Admiral Cross. I need to understand something. When the Croth come, and they will come for your world eventually, if we fail here, what happens? Ethan turned his coffee cup slowly in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was level, almost gentle, which somehow made it more frightening. The last time someone invaded Earth, one nation, one country, a few million soldiers, we lost 27 million people fighting them. The invaders lost more. And we did not stop. We fought in the streets, in the buildings, in the sewers. We made every meter of ground cost more than the one before it. We made the entire country a weapon. He set the cup down. That was one country. Against another country. With the weapons of 100 years ago. Zyrex said nothing. If the Croth come for Earth, Ethan continued, they won't find a military. They'll find 8 billion people who grew up on stories about what happens when someone tries to take what's ours. He looked out at the stars. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years, Marshal. We know how to hate. We know how to endure. The Croth have never met an enemy that doesn't know when to stop. The campaign took 19 months. It looked nothing like war, not the way the Confederation understood war. There were no grand fleet engagements, no climactic battles recorded for history. There were ambushes in asteroid fields. Explosions in deep space fuel stations. Supply convoys that vanished without a trace. Communication networks that developed strange failures. Croth forward bases that found their food supplies contaminated, their water recyclers mysteriously malfunctioning. Human teams, small, impossibly patient, operating on minimal support, ghosted through the dark between stars. Ethan Cross moved his command ship 7 times to avoid detection. He slept 4 hours a night and spent the rest studying Croth logistics with the focus of a man solving a puzzle that had killed his friends. Zyrex watched it all. He watched the Croth advance slow, then stop. He watched their communication traffic change in tone, a subtlety his analysts almost missed, but Ethan had flagged it in week 6. The Croth are starting to argue with their high command. The frontline commanders were requesting reinforcements that weren't coming. They were consuming resources faster than projected. They had planned for a confederation that would break and sue for peace within a year. Instead, they found themselves standing in the dark, wondering why nothing was working, losing soldiers not to pitched battle but to constant, invisible pressure, and unable to make it stop. In the 19th month, the Croth Dominion's lead general transmitted a request for ceasefire negotiations. In the council chamber, amid the cautious celebration, Zyrex found Ethan standing apart, looking at the war table, now showing Croth forces in slow withdrawal. You knew, Zyrex said quietly. From the beginning. You knew this was how it would end. Ethan picked up his coffee. It was cold again. He didn't seem to mind. I knew it was possible, he said. The Croth are conquerors. They're used to enemies who fight and lose, or fight and win. They don't have a doctrine for an enemy that just keeps going. That makes everything expensive. That makes every day of this war cost more than the day before. He paused. No empire in history has infinite will. You just have to make the price too high to pay. In your history, Zyrex said, who taught humanity this? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Everyone who ever tried to conquer us, he said. He drank the cold coffee and walked away from the war table, and Zyrex stood alone in the fading red glow of the alerts, finally understanding something that no galactic military academy had ever taught him. Humanity had not survived 10,000 years of war by being the strongest species on their planet. They had survived by being the most stubborn. And in a universe full of conquerors, that was the most dangerous thing of all.